of you work in jobs that require a security clearance. So you have to live a moral life. And you work with people that are very moral people, outwardly. They have to be moral to keep their security clearance. And so they're moral outwardly. The moral person's sins may not be as obvious as the ungodly person's sins, because the ungodly person's sins are outward. They're external. You can see them. The moral person's sins may not be as overt as the ungodly person's sins. You can look at, often you can look at an ungodly person. You can look at their life and how they're living, their lifestyle, and you say, yeah, they're a sinner. Look what they're doing. Yeah, that guy's definitely a sinner. It's obvious. The moral person is also a sinner. But the moral person's sin is hidden. It's internal sin. In Matthew chapter 23, Jesus said this of the religious leaders. He said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Outwardly you appear righteous. Outwardly you're moral. Outwardly you're a good person. But you have all the sin on the inside." The ungodly person in chapter 1, all of their sin is on the outside and the inside. You can see it in their life. It's obvious. For the moral person, it's all on the inside. It's hidden. It's not as obvious. If you look back in chapter 1 at verses 29 to 31, Paul gave us a list of sins that are practiced by the ungodly person. The moral person, the good person, is not practicing those same sins, at least not all of them. The moral person, for example, if you look at that list, a moral person is likely not practicing sexual immorality. They're not hooking up with a different person every weekend. The moral person is not murdering people. They're not a serial killer. But look at the list. The moral person, the good person, may have the sin of covetousness. Covetousness is an internal sin. It's a hidden sin of the heart. Covetousness is in the list with murder and sexual immorality and violence and hating God. So a good person can covet something in their heart. A good person may have the sin of greed. Greed is another internal sin that's not easy to spot. Or maliciousness. Just be a malicious person. Or malicious in their thoughts or malicious in their attitude. The good person may have the sin of envy. Or they're envious of others. They're jealous of others. A good person may have the sin of deceit and just be a deceitful person, a manipulator. Or whisperers, it says in my translation, that's a gossiper. A moral person, a good person, may have the sin of gossip or be a backbiter, a backstabber. The good person may have the sin of pride. That's in the list. Pride. Maybe a proud person. A good person may think they are superior to others in some way. I'm not like the people in chapter 1. I'm not like those ungodly people. Pride is a sin. The good person, verse 31, the good person may be untrustworthy. That means someone who breaks their promises. Or unloving. Unloving is in the list. The same list with sexual immorality and murder and violence and hatred of God. A good person can be an unloving person. Or how about unforgiving? Unforgiving is in the list. Refusing to forgive someone. A good person can be unforgiving. Again, that's a hidden sin in the heart, where they harbor unforgiveness in their heart and bitterness and hold a grudge against someone, or unmerciful. So the moral person condemns the ungodly person for their sin, but the moral person practices the same things. They may not practice some of the more, overt sins that are in this list, but they practice the sins that are more internal sins, the hidden sins of the heart, like envy and covetousness and greed and pride and unforgiveness and so on. Those are all sins too. And God puts them all in the same list together. The moral person, the good person, believes God will judge the ungodly for their obvious, excessive sinfulness. And God will overlook their own sins. Because in their opinion, their sin isn't that bad. Their sin isn't as grievous as the sins of the ungodly in chapter 1. Again, you talk to a moral person, a good person, they'll say to you, I'm a good person. I've never murdered anyone. What do they say? I'm not as bad as some of those other people. Look back at chapter 1, verse 18. Chapter 1, verse 18, which begins this whole section here that we're in. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against, notice, all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in their unrighteousness. God's wrath is against all forms of ungodliness and unrighteousness. And all means all, including the sins of the good person, including the sins the good person thinks God will just overlook, or God will excuse from his judgment because it's really not that bad of a sin, especially compared to the sins of other people.